After working very hard during our first 2 weeks in Sofia, Bulgaria, Vlad and I were ready to take some day trips during week 3. So today Vlad and I are on our way to Macedonia or North Macedonia, depending on who you ask. Yay! My dear friend Vlad and I are both fond of traveling. We have visited a total of 10 different countries together, and one thing we really like to do is go on day trips. Whenever we're spending an extended period of time in a certain country, by booking a day trip, sometimes we can visit a bordering country or a different part of the country that we are in. And for us, it is an affordable way to get to see more stuff. So after 2 weeks of dissertation writing and remote work for me and hostel work for Vlad, the first day trip we went on was Skopje, North Macedonia. Even though I was spending a total of 10 weeks in Sofia, Vlad was only going to be in Sofia for a total of 3 weeks. So for his last week in Bulgaria, we essentially booked a day trip every other day. So that meant every other day during our 3rd week, we got to explore Sofia. One place in Sofia we had heard a lot about and certainly wanted to check out was the quote-unquote women's market. The women's market dates back to the 19th century, and it was originally a place where rural women could sell farm goods. The women's market has not only survived but thrived through Sofia's changing times, reflecting the city's resilience and the enduring importance of traditional marketplaces in Bulgarian culture. The women's market has a wide range of goods, and today you can find everything from fresh produce and Bulgarian cheeses to clothing, crafts, and spices. So it provides a perfect taste of local flavors and unique souvenirs. Before leaving the market, Vlad and I spotted the strawberry flavored candies that most American grandmothers seem to keep in their purse, so he decided to buy some so he could try them for himself. Vlad is from Belgium, and he was unfamiliar with this strange American grandma phenomenon. One thing that was new to both Vlad and myself in Bulgaria was this flavor of Fanta in a blue bottle. It seemed to be some kind of lemon flavor. Neither of us are too sure, but we consistently purchased it during our stay. Despite the rain, Vlad and I decided to go on a walking tour that focused on the history of communism in Bulgaria. Here you can see the former Bulgarian Communist Party headquarters, and you can see where there was once a hammer and sickle emblem. Interestingly, however, the building next door still has a hammer and sickle on display, with one individual holding a hammer in their hand and the other individual holding a sickle in theirs. Here we have the Central State Archives, which houses detailed records from Bulgaria's communist-era state security. These records provide insight into the individuals monitored by the regime. And today, if anyone is interested in taking a look at the records kept on themselves, they can do so. Even though Vlad and I both have an interest in communism and politics more generally, we were not able to get through the 3-hour walking tour because we had not had our Starbucks fix for the day just yet. but we still had an enjoyable and rainy day in Sofia. Now it's time for our next day trip. Vlad, where are we off to today?
We're off to Plovdiv and a random city, I forgot the name.
So Plovdiv and some other city that I don't know how to pronounce either.
Yeah.
And what did you have to make a stop to get this morning?
Our daily blue Fanta.
So Vlad calls it Fanta, I call it Fanta, but that's because I grew up watching those commercials that said, "Don't you want a Fanta?" My fellow millennials from the United States, I'm sure will know what I'm talking about. Anywho, for our next day trip, Vlad and I were off to both the city of Plovdiv and the village of Koprivshtitsa, which for obvious reasons is quite difficult for me to pronounce. Plovdiv, which is much easier and quite fun to pronounce, is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Europe. It dates back over 8,000 years and has layers of history from the Thracian, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman periods. Plovdiv is known for its well-preserved Roman theater and its charming old town, which you can see here with colorful 19th century houses. The houses in Plovdiv's old town were painted in different colors to showcase the wealth of their owners during the Bulgarian national revival period, and this reflects a blend of Ottoman and European architectural styles. We also learned about these red and white bracelets that are traditionally hung on trees when the first stork of spring is seen. This is a tradition that later on in my 10-week journey I took part in, but I did not wait until I saw a stork, and I probably did it incorrectly. But that's okay, because traditionally this is meant to symbolize health and good fortune, so maybe I'll have some luck even though I did it incorrectly. Plovdiv's Roman theater was built in the 2nd century AD, and it's one of the best preserved ancient theaters in the world. It has a seating capacity of around 7,000 spectators, and it's still used for performances today. Believe it or not, this Roman theater was actually buried for centuries. It was hidden beneath layers of earth and buildings, but it was rediscovered in the 1970s during construction work. The 1970s discovery revealed this remarkable structure that had been preserved nearly intact. The discovery was a significant moment for the city because it unveiled a major piece of Plovdiv's ancient Roman heritage. So we are in Plovdiv. Vlad and I did a tour of the old town, and now we are in the newer area where locals like to hang out. So we're just walking around and checking it out. Yes, I was initially calling the city Plovdiv, but I quickly caught on that it is so much more fun to say Plovdiv. I am not particularly a fan of the show Friends, and neither is Vlad, but we thought it was super cool that Plovdiv had this restaurant called Central Perk, so that's where we decided to grab some lunch. After a few hours in Plovdiv, Vlad and I were off to spend some time in the village of Koprivshtitsa. Koprivshtitsa is a very small town or even a village known for its role in the Bulgarian national revival and the 1876 April Uprising. The 1876 April Uprising was a key event in Bulgaria's struggle for independence from the Ottoman Empire. The small town is also famous for its well-preserved 19th century Bulgarian revival style houses with colorful facades, wooden beams, and intricate carvings that reflect the cultural heritage of the period. Today, Koprivshtitsa has a very small population of around 2,000 residents, but this helps to preserve its quiet and picturesque charm. Even with its small population, Koprivshtitsa is actually a popular weekend getaway spot for Bulgarians because it has such a peaceful vibe. When walking through the cobblestone streets, I was very surprised to see that a resident had 3 horseshoes hanging above their door, but in my opinion, the horseshoes were hanging in the wrong direction. I was raised to believe that if you hang a horseshoe above your door, it needs to be upright. Otherwise, your luck is just going to fall out. But interestingly enough, there was another property that had the horseshoe hanging upright. So it seems like the verdict is still out within Bulgaria as to which way is the proper way to hang a horseshoe above your door. I actually really liked Koprivshtitsa more than Plovdiv even. I found it to be an incredibly peaceful and pleasant place to walk around. But after our day trip, it was time for Vlad and I to spend a bit more time in Sofia. Next up on our itinerary was checking out an attraction called the Red Flat. And the Red Flat is described as being a bit of a time capsule. It is decorated with items from the 1980s to give visitors a sense of what a 1980s communist era flat might have been like in Sofia. This was an incredibly enjoyable experience, and this was actually the second time that Vlad and I had an experience like this. A few months before our trip to Bulgaria, we took a trip to Bucharest, Romania, and we were able to explore a flat decorated with items from the latter half of Romania's communist era. In Romania, however, we were accompanied by a tour guide, and in Bulgaria, we were able to listen to a 90-minute audio guide that was incredibly educational and informative. Exploring Sofia's quote-unquote red flat ended up being such an insightful and enjoyable experience that I made a separate video exclusively about this experience. Vlad and I ended up finding a restaurant in Sofia that we considered our favorite restaurant in the city. And one interesting feature that the restaurant had was stray cats wandering around. Stray cats are a very common sight in Bulgaria, and they tend to roam freely and are fed by locals. These cats are part of the urban landscape, and many Bulgarians consider them a beloved feature of their communities. In addition to the stray cats, Vlad and I were treated to some of the loudest music that has ever been played in a restaurant. But we had a delicious meal before our next day trip to Serbia. So Vlad and I made it to Niš, Serbia. There was a small mishap with my laundry. Someone working at the hostel offered to get it done overnight because doing the laundry is part of their job. But when I woke up this morning, my clothes were nowhere to be found, so I had no choice but to wear this dress I had purchased, but wasn't really looking forward to wearing. I've got some of my earrings that I bought recently in Gdansk, and like a real European, I'm wearing walking shoes with my dress. This is not something I would consider to be very stylish in the US, but it's something I see very frequently in Europe. So yeah, we made it to Niš. This was Vlad's last full day in Bulgaria, and we were not even spending the day in Bulgaria. But yes, I had to wear a dress that I had purchased in Sofia, and I was not enthusiastic about it because the dress seemed like it might have been handmade and it was uneven in several places. It was kind of tacky, if I'm being honest. Our first stop was actually just outside of Niš to see the remains of an ancient Roman city. For additional historical background, I will be making a separate video all about this day trip to Niš, Serbia. But next up, we visited what's known as the Skull Tower. The Skull Tower was built by the Ottomans in the early 19th century, and it was constructed from the skulls of Serbian Christian rebels after a major battle. In more recent decades, some people advocated for completely deconstructing the Skull Tower, and you can see where many, if not most, of the skulls have been removed. But it was ultimately decided to preserve the tower as a historical monument to ensure that this dark chapter of history was not completely erased. Our next stop was the Red Cross concentration camp in Niš, Serbia. The camp had zero affiliation with the Red Cross organization. Instead, it was named after its location in Serbia's Red Cross neighborhood. So this was kind of an unfortunate mishap with regard to the name. Our last stop of the day was downtown Niš for some lunch. This was a truly fascinating day that took us from the Roman Empire to the Ottoman Empire through the turbulent events of World War II and even into the post-Yugoslav and post-communist era of present-day Serbia. My third week was officially in the books with crossing the border back into Bulgaria, and I had to say goodbye to my dear friend Vlad. Here's to my remaining 7 weeks in Sofia as a solo traveler.